Some divorces leave behind a woman who walks out of the courthouse in silence, carrying an emptiness she doesn't yet know how to name. This is the story of a woman like that, one who walked through heartbreak not with loud strength, but through sleepless nights, unsteady days, and a quiet journey of learning how to stand firmly in her own life again. On the day she signed the divorce papers, the woman did not cry. She sat perfectly upright, her hands neatly placed on the table, her eyes fixed on the empty space behind the man who used to be her husband. People around her thought she was strong. Only she knew that her emotions had gone numb, too exhausted even to feel pain. When she stepped out of the courthouse, the midday sun beat down mercilessly on the scorching pavement. She stopped for a few seconds, unsure whether to turn left or right. A marriage that lasted more than 10 years ended with just a few signatures, while the life ahead suddenly felt empty, without direction. Her phone vibrated in her pocket with a missed call. She glanced at the screen and turned it off. The calendar still held old reminders she hadn't had the heart to delete. On the first night after the divorce, she returned to the small apartment she had just rented. She set her suitcase down, sat on the floor, looked around the unfamiliar room, and for the first time after the divorce, tears fell. It wasn't a sobbing cry, it was the kind of silent crying, chest aching, throat tightened, tears flowing without permission. She cried for the house once called home, for dinners no one waited for anymore, for the years of endurance that still couldn't save anything. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, memories rushed back. Arguments, cold words, nights spent turning away from each other, and the moment she realised she had been lonely even within the marriage. After that, her sleep became restless. She would drift off near dawn, only to wake in the middle of the night with her heart racing and her mind completely empty. Sometimes she dreamed in fragments, unclear, fleeting, and woke up unable to remember them, only knowing the heaviness remained. She grew used to staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the distant sounds of the city, listening to her own breathing, steady but exhausted. She wasn't crying because she still loved him. She cried because everything had fallen apart, and she no longer knew where she stood in her own life. One corner of the pillow was soaked, yet the next morning she still pressed her face into it, stealing a few more minutes of sleep before going to work. During the day, she still went to work. She arrived at the office on time, sat at her familiar desk, but her focus was gone. Some mornings, she turned on her computer and stared at the screen for a long time, unable to remember what she was supposed to do next. In meetings, she heard others speaking, but her thoughts drifted away, impossible to grasp. Tasks that once came effortlessly now became strangely difficult. She began to make mistakes, not major ones, but noticeable. A report with omissions, a deadline nearly missed, a hesitant answer. At first, her colleagues gently reminded her. Then came the uneasy looks, and gradually, silence. She felt that change very clearly. In the meeting room, her opinions were asked for less and less. Sometimes she spoke up and no one responded. A few minutes later, someone else said almost the exact same thing, and this time everyone nodded. She sat still, her hands resting on the table, feeling as if she had been erased from the room without anyone noticing. There were project emails where she was only included for information, no longer the decision-maker she once was. The long nights without sleep made her days even worse. She went to work with dark circles under her eyes, drinking coffee constantly while her mind remained foggy. The more exhausted she became, the more mistakes she made. The more mistakes she made, the more afraid she felt. One afternoon, her manager called her in for a conversation. There was no harshness, no blame, just a calm statement. "You don't seem quite yourself lately. If this continues, I'm not sure the company can keep waiting." She nodded and said she would try harder, but as she stepped out of the room, her hands turned cold. One thought filled her mind. Just one more mistake and she would lose this job. She opened her banking app and stared at the balance for a long time, calculating for the first time how many months she could survive without a salary. That night she came home early. She didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa, and a sense of helplessness washed over her. It wasn't sharp pain, but a cold, hollow emptiness. She cried, this time without holding back. She cried from exhaustion, from fear, from the realization that, for the first time in her life, she felt like a failure, both in her marriage and in her career. That cycle lasted for weeks. By day, she went to work completely drained. By night, she collapsed. Each side slowly consumed what remained of her, and she didn't know where to stop. One evening, after crying until she had no tears left, she sat up and opened her laptop just to kill time. For reasons she couldn't explain, she accidentally opened an old folder, work files from several years ago. Plans she once led, emails where others had waited for her opinion before making decisions. For the first time in months, she suddenly realised that she wasn't incompetent. She had simply been exhausted for far too long. Once, purely by chance, she saw her ex-husband. He stood in the middle of the street, laughing and talking with someone, looking familiar and calm, as if the broken marriage had never touched his life. She stood not far away. She didn't approach, nor did she turn away immediately. She looked for just a few seconds, long enough to realise something that made her heart sink. He was doing fine. It wasn't his smile that hurt her. It was the fact that she had allowed herself to be worn down for far too long, while the one who left first had moved on more lightly. In that moment, there was no jealousy, no resentment, only one blunt question rising in her mind. What am I punishing myself for, when the other person has already stopped looking back? She turned away, her back a little straighter. Not because she had suddenly become strong, but because for the first time since the divorce, she understood that if this pain continued, it was no longer because of love, but because she hadn't yet allowed herself to let go. That weekend, she went home to visit her family. There was no special plan, she had simply been avoiding it, and since the divorce, she hadn't visited her parents in a long time. When she stepped into the house, she saw them more clearly than ever. She looked at them and realised for the first time how quickly her parents' time was passing, while she, after all the years of being raised, educated and supported, was still struggling, unsteady, nearly losing the last thing that made her feel she still had value. For the first time in a long while, she didn't only feel sorry for herself, she felt it for her parents. On the drive back to the city, she didn't make any grand promises. Only one thought was clear. She couldn't keep losing herself like this. She stood up not to prove anything to society, but because she didn't want her parents to grow old, worrying that their daughter had failed to hold on to her life. She took a few days off to regain her rhythm. She spoke honestly with her manager, offered no excuses, only admitting she was struggling and needed time to adjust. She worked more slowly, but more steadily. She treated her mental health as a necessity, not a luxury. Gradually, her focus returned. Not perfect, but enough to keep her position. The sleepless nights became less frequent. They didn't disappear, but they no longer drowned her. 1 year after the divorce, her life wasn't radiant. But it had order. It had direction. In a city that never sleeps, the woman learnt to live more slowly, more firmly, not to prove herself, not to meet society's expectations, but simply to not abandon herself and not betray those who gave her life.